You can rebuild a shipyard in 3 years. Steel, cranes, dry docks, all of it. But the guy who spent 40 years learning exactly where to put a weld on a submarine hull, he just retired. And nobody filmed the tutorial. Today we're tracing how the country that built 9,000 ships in a single war now builds fewer than 5 a year, and why that number should scare you, even if you've never stepped foot on a boat. So here's the headline version, the one you've probably already heard. China builds over 1,000 ships a year. According to 60 Minutes, they now account for more than 50% of all new vessels on the planet. The United States? Maybe 3. In a good year, 5. That's not a gap. That's a different sport. Now, quick clarification. The U.S. Navy still builds warships, submarines, destroyers, all classified, all heavily subsidized. That pipeline never stopped. What stopped? The other ships. The cargo vessels, the tankers, the container ships that move your coffee, your car parts, your medicine across oceans. That's what collapsed. And the reason everyone gives? China's cheaper. South Korea and Japan build ships too, good ones. But China does it at scale no one else can touch. Government subsidies, lower labor costs, massive industrial strategy. And that's true. That part's real. But here's what nobody tells you. We didn't just lose to cheaper competition. We bought cheaper by selling something else. The jobs, the knowledge, the guys with 40 years of salt in their hands. Nobody held a gun to anyone's head. Shareholders demanded growth. Suppliers obliged. 36 consecutive quarters of choosing cheaper over capable. And one day, capable was gone. And once you sell that, you can't Amazon Prime it back. Let me take you back to 1936. The United States passes the Merchant Marine Act. Simply put, the government says, we'll help pay for new ships because a strong merchant fleet is national security. And it works. For decades, American shipyards are humming. 20 new commercial vessels a year on average. Good union jobs. Towns built around dry docks. Then 1981 hits. Reagan's administration kills the construction differential subsidy, the program that had been keeping American shipyards competitive with foreign builders. The reasoning? American yards were internationally uncompetitive. The administration believed the subsidy distorted market competition. Some blamed union wages for driving costs too high. But here's the thing. Union welders in the 1970s built ships that competed globally. The union didn't change. The subsidy did. When the government stopped covering the cost gap between building here and building overseas, suddenly the same workers with the same wages became too expensive. Follow the money from that moment. 1981, subsidy ends. Shipyards can't compete on price. Orders dry up. 1990s, yards start closing, one by one. Philadelphia, San Francisco, Quincy. 2000s, the land where ships were built? Condos, warehouses, parking lots. By 2020, the United States has maybe 7 or 8 active commercial shipyards, out of over 150. Pattern showing, right? Now here's where it gets personal. There's a law called the Jones Act. It's been around since 1920. Simply put, if you want to ship cargo between 2 American ports, the ship has to be American-built, American-crewed, American-flagged. Sounds patriotic. And in theory, it's supposed to protect the domestic shipping industry. But here's the problem. When you've only got a handful of shipyards left, and they're all expensive, that protection becomes a tax. On you. If you live in Hawaii, you're paying roughly double the shipping cost compared to a foreign-flagged route. A New York Fed study found that Puerto Rico pays about $3,000 per container, versus $1,500 for nearby foreign ports. That's not abstract. That's your grocery bill, your furniture, your medicine. Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, they're all paying a premium because the law says American ships only. But America barely builds ships anymore. And meanwhile, Beijing was doing the opposite. pouring billions into shipyards, trade schools, apprenticeship programs, building the workforce America was letting retire. One country treated shipbuilding as national strategy. The other called cutting it efficiency. And here's the part that honestly gives me chills. We always talk about factories closing, steel mills shutting down, car plants moving overseas. But a shipyard isn't just a factory. It's a skill ecosystem. The guy who knows how to bend a steel plate for a hull, that's not something you learn in a semester. That's decades. And right now, the average age of a machinist in the United States is 46. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that means in 15 years, the majority of the people who know how to do this won't be here. Not overseas, not on strike, retired, gone. Nobody's writing that knowledge down. Nobody's filming the tutorial. It's just gone. No undo button. Let me put this in perspective. During World War II, America's shipyards were the most productive on Earth. The Kaiser Richmond Yard set a record, building the SS Robert E. Peary, a full Liberty ship, in under 5 days. The average back then was about 42 days per ship. 9,000 ships in 4 years. That wasn't just money. That was people. Welders, riveters, crane operators, engineers, an entire generation that understood steel the way a surgeon understands tissue. Now, some will say, you can't compare. World War II Liberty ships were simple. A modern container vessel has 40,000 parts, precision steel, computer-controlled systems. You can't just ramp up production like it's 1943. And they're right. Modern ships are harder to build. But that's exactly the point. The skills needed are more specialized, more irreplaceable. And we lost them anyway. Think about what happened after the war. Those workers aged. Their kids went to college, not to the yard. The apprenticeship program shrank. The vocational schools closed. And the shipyards? They became that condo development on the waterfront you drive past without thinking twice. There's a guy, 75 years old, who started welding submarine hulls at 17 in a Philadelphia yard. He can feel if a seam is a micron off. That's not a skill you teach in a classroom. That's not a YouTube tutorial. That's 58 years of his hands learning something no textbook can hold. He retires next year, and nobody asked him to pass it down. That's the layer nobody talks about. Not the steel, not the subsidies, the hands. And this, all of this, wasn't an accident. Every quarter for 40 years, someone looked at a spreadsheet and made a choice. Ship this order overseas, it's cheaper. Close this yard, the margins don't work. Cut the apprenticeship program, it doesn't show up in EPS. Simply put, EPS is earnings per share, the number Wall Street watches every 90 days. And every 90 days, someone chose that number over the next generation of shipbuilders. This wasn't the market. Markets don't make decisions. People do. Executives signed the offshoring contracts. Boards approved the yard closures. Legislators let the subsidies die. Every single one of them knew what would happen. They chose the math anyway. Nothing in supply chains happens by accident. This wasn't a collapse. It was a choice. Thousands of small choices exposed by time. That's how an industry actually dies. Not with a bang, with a spreadsheet. So what does this mean for you? All three trace back to one thing. Someone, somewhere, decided that quarterly earnings mattered more than long-term capability. You've been paying for that decision every day. You just didn't know who made it. Landing one. Next time you open an Amazon box, that $4 microwave, it was made in China, shipped on a Chinese-built vessel through a port that used to build ships itself. The price was cheap because someone, somewhere, decided American shipbuilding wasn't worth saving. You got the discount. The machinist in Philadelphia got a severance check. Landing two. If you live in Hawaii, Alaska, or Puerto Rico, you're paying a Jones Act premium on everything that arrives by sea: food, medicine, building materials. Because the law demands American ships, but America doesn't make enough ships to keep prices down. The New York Fed estimated Hawaiian households pay about $1,800 extra per year. Landing 3. Your taxes. The defense budget is over $850 billion. A chunk of that goes to maintaining a navy. But the commercial fleet that supports military logistics, it's aging out. And the yards that could build replacements are gone. So when the next supply chain crisis hits, and it will, the bill comes back to you. In taxes, in prices, in delays. 3 ways one decision made 40 years ago still reaches into your wallet, and none of them are on the news tonight. Here's what sticks with me. We didn't lose this capability in a war. We didn't have it taken from us. We watched it retire. One machinist at a time, one spreadsheet at a time, one quarter at a time. And the scariest part? Some people are trying to rebuild. Hanwha just spent $100 million buying the Philadelphia shipyard, with $5 billion more pledged. That's real money. But money buys cranes. Money buys steel. Money doesn't buy the guy who's already 75, sitting on his porch, with 4 decades of knowledge in his hands that nobody asked him to pass down. $7 billion has been pledged to rebuild. But there's one problem that money can't buy, and nobody in Washington wants to talk about it. That's the next story, and it's coming. We trace where things go. I'll see you in the next one.